Hey, good morning. Well, it's still kind of morning. Um, Welcome to my rant today. It is July 4th, our nation's Independence Day, and I'm just going to weigh in for a minute on a topic that has surfaced and come up recently and apparently existed for a long time, and I just honestly didn't know about it. And I'll get to that whole thing in a second. But it's the whole issue or debate now about our original flag, as sewn by Betsy Ross back in the 1700s to commemorate our independence and to use as the original flag for the 13 colonies becoming 13 states, and how Nike put them on a pair of shoes, and Colin Kaepernick said, you shouldn't put them on there because it's a sign of oppression and what have you. And so Nike pulled the shoes and is canceling the shoes and not going to put them out. And seeing the fallout from that on both sides, with the people saying, fine, let's flood the internet with a flag of the original colonies, and other people saying, good job on that. And I'd like to weigh in, not from my personal opinion, because I'm not going to share my personal opinion with this, but just in the matter of talking about it from a position of, maybe weakness and a position of strength, what that looks like. And I'm not talking about if people don't like it, then they're weak. I'm not saying that. So if you're hearing that from me, you're not really listening. I'm not saying anybody's weak, and I'm not saying anybody's above anybody else or anything like that. What I'd like to do is just kind of pose this from a position of reason. Okay, that's what I kind of try to do. So to start with, to say that it's a sign of oppression and it's been used by the white nationalists, and the Nazis and what have you. And so I posted on a friend's Facebook post about it. I said the flag is historical. People have made it political. And a person I don't know, a complete stranger, kind of called me out on that and said, that it's been used by the white supremacists and all this stuff as a symbol and all this stuff. And I honestly haven't seen that. So I merely replied, I have never seen that, and I'm going by that. The flag is merely historical. It doesn't present any sort of political bent, ideology, or anything. We give it that ideology, or we give it that sentiment. So then this person responded back to me, essentially saying, he said, quote, I love when people lead with their limited view, and that if I had just done a quick search, I would realize that, and that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting he said that, because immediately after me posting my response, I did a quick search, and I saw that some white supremacist groups and the white nationalist groups, even the Klan, over history, has carried that flag. Okay. But even the watchdog groups say that it's not significant enough as to think of it or call it an actual symbol or artifact of that movement. Okay, so again, I'm back to saying, well, then I'm all right. I haven't seen it because it's not that big a deal for them. They'll do it every once in a while, and that's great. It's not nearly like the Nazi swastika or the Confederate flag, right? Which we're all familiar with. So anyway, I posed it back to this person, and I haven't seen if he's responded to me or anything, but I posed it back with a couple of things like this, and I'd like to just think about this before I go on to the action portion of my talk today. Is so if we let these groups hijack different symbols and different artifacts because they were created or designed or manifested in a time of oppression, slavery, what have you. And don't get me wrong, people. Don't jump on your conclusion wagon. I have ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War, died in the Revolutionary War, were killed in the Revolutionary War, and ancestors who were enslaved and were freed uh, at the by the Emancipation Proclamation and the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. So I have it both ways. So I'm not saying slavery, I'm not minimizing slavery or anything like that. It's something that we still have to acknowledge and deal with in this country, but that's another talk for another day. So if we do that and we say any artifact that was created at that time, is a sign of oppression, and we can't recognize it, we can't allow it, it's being used by the white supremacists, we have to think of a couple different things. What else do we get rid of? Do we get rid of the Declaration of Independence because it was created by slave owners? Do we get rid of the Constitution and say we can't use the Constitution because it didn't apply to slaves when it was created? The documents were intended for white men, so we can't use any of them. They were used by the oppressor. They were used by the majority group to keep the minority group in a subservient position. So we can't use them. Is that what we do with the Constitution? Then we can't use it? Then if that's the case, we get rid of the Constitution, we have to get rid of all the amendments, including the aforementioned 14th Amendment, freeing the slaves, the 19th Amendment, allowing women to vote, that gave women the vote, and all the other amendments that have been created that benefit our society today. Something to think about. And you might try to say, I'm being naive and I'm being too simplistic, but why do we need to make it more complicated than that? Our country is built on both positive and negative. And that's where we are. We can't deny it. We can't erase it. We can't subvert it. We can't ignore it. It was created on both positive and negative. Some of you may have seen a deal going on right now out in San Francisco at George Washington High School where they are deciding, I think they have decided to cover over murals that were created years ago that people now think show oppression. It's history. And, well, to give you a little insight, that was my high school. I went to George Washington High School in San Francisco. I can honestly tell you that as a high school student, never gave those murals much thought other than that they were historical, that they represented history. No judgment on whether it was good or bad, right or wrong. It was just that they represented history. To me, it was up to me as an individual to determine what I took away from that portrayal, that illustration, that mural. And what I took away from it was that our country was founded by white men, and there was slavery. They subjugated Native Americans and everything. And that's what I picked up from these murals. And that we were no longer in that spot, but we were trying to get better and change. That's just me. So anyway, that's my little sidebar on that. So back to this issue here. So the next part I want to talk about is taking back that power, right? So we're ready to give up power all the time. White supremacists take the original flag. Okay, you can have it. That's a sign of oppression. We don't want that anymore. All these kinds of things. Getting rid of things that don't make us feel comfortable or make us feel uncomfortable. If we did that, where do we stop? We have 380 million people living in this country. If we to get rid of everything that makes everybody feel comfortable, well, I'd say we'd be sitting here naked, but that would make people feel uncomfortable. Where do we stop with it? As I said, do we get rid of the Constitution? Do we get rid of all the amendments to the Constitution? Or do we take the power back when we need to? As the majority population, i.e. not any race, not any color, not any ethnicity, not any religion, as the majority population, people who actually give a damn about making this country great, truly great, that it is all inclusive and that it's equitable for everyone, as that majority population, why do we not take the power back from the minority populations that continue to try to disrupt, divest, disengage, separate, factionalize us? Why don't we take the power back? Seems easier to me. When I was a police officer, I was a gang detective, and I used to give gang talks, and people would be like, "Oh, what do we do about gangs? They're out of control." And I go, "Do you realize that gang members make up about a 0.03% of the population? Maybe even less than that. It's like 0.003% of the population. They are a huge minority. Why aren't we, as the majority, telling them how it's going to be? Why do we let such a minority dictate to us, the vast majority, how we're going to live our lives and how we're going to perceive our lives and perceive our world? That just doesn't make sense to me. Never has. And it won't. It's not going to. I don't want to let it. So, talk about taking back the power. This is my quote, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I heard it somewhere else. I just forgot who it said. But nothing has power over us except that which we give it by our mostly emotional response to it. All right? Think about that. Nothing has power. It doesn't. And you might say, well, you can't tell me that, like, you know, the Holocaust, that's part. Yeah, I got you. It was significant. It was a tragedy, and it was horrible, horrific event, long-term event in our history. But we can do a couple things. We can make it have power to constrict us, to paralyze us, to create fear, or we can use it as power to say, no, never. And that is this, never again. Yeah? We can use it to say, I am going to do everything I can to make sure that never happens again, or anything like it ever happens again. Right? That's power. Two different types of power. We determine what type of power it has for us. Okay? So, just some things to think about, right? As we deal mostly emotionally with everything, just some things to back off and have some reason for things, with things. Another thing, when we acknowledge that white supremacists and Nazis have this flag and have these beliefs, and that these beliefs are, we validate them. Now here's my thing. I don't consider them even, they're people, they're human beings. I don't consider them valid. I don't consider them worthy of consideration, other than to continually deny their existence and deny their validity, let's say. They exist, but deny their validity. I give them no validation. When we say, oh, they've hijacked this or they have this and suppression, we validate them by saying, yes, you're correct. This period was horrible and it paralyzed us, and we're actually still there. We're still paralyzed and we're still fearful of you and fearful of that symbol. And to me, I say, I'm not scared of you. I have no fear of you. Because you are a vast, vast, vast minority. And I've got a whole lot more people who are on my side than you have on your side. You decide how you're going to be in this world. You decide if you want to live in fear, or if you want to live in positive, you want to live in joy, you want to live in love. You decide. I know my choice. Here's another thing, right? So let's talk about the MAGA, Make America Great Again. We see that, and what do we instantly start to think of? Oh, when was America great? Was it when there was slavery? Was it when there was this? Was it when there was Jim Crow? Was it, when the Europeans settled here and, decimated and annihilated the indigenous population? Well, if you look at it that way, okay. If you look at America as only being when people settled in what was later to become the United States, then yeah, maybe then you do have that negative connotation and negative outlook. But me, I'm constantly reminded that America includes everything from Canada down to the tip of Argentina. So in that respect, Make America Great Again could mean prior to European involvement and European arrival, when indigenous life practices were the standard and were the way things went. How about that? How about if we say, oh, okay, when there was sustainability, when there was a love of nature, when there was a respect for nature and respect for human beings, all human beings, and maybe that's what we're talking about, make America great again. Could that be it? It's all how you choose to look at it. If you choose to say it's a bad thing, or it's about being racist and discriminatory, then there you have it. But if you say it's about being inclusive and being equitable and being positive and being together, then you're looking at life through positive power, and you've taken your power back. And which way would you rather live? So, just a couple of my thoughts on that topic. I know I got off on little things, I usually do, but that's okay, I come back. So to reiterate, you choose how you decide to view your life, view everything in your life, view how things go. And always remember that if somebody says, I have never seen that before, maybe they're not trying to validate their ignorance or excuse things through their ignorance. Maybe they just honestly haven't experienced it. It's one way to look at it. So anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in today. I appreciate it. And hopefully I've been controversial, but in a way that is positive and helps you understand that really what I'm about is what are we doing for all of us and how are we living that life. Thanks. See you next time. This is Mark, Ranting Within Reason.